Welcome al podcast de Palante Nonprofits. I'm your host, Andrea Ortega, y estoy super excited to dive into the world of nonprofits. In Spanglish. En cada episodio exploraremos temas como leadership, fundraising, compliance, utilizar tecnología para el cambio y mucho más. We are changemakers y estamos aquí para inspirar, educar and empower a las comunidades hispanas en todo el mundo. Let's navigate the sector juntos. Palante Nonprofits. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Palante Nonprofits podcast. Can you believe it? This is episode 7. Today's episode is titled Technology for Good, Leveraging Tech in Hispanic Nonprofits. And, we're going to dive into technology and the crucial role that it plays into advancing our missions. And I'm really happy to present that we have Joe Mata III. Joe comes from a policy background with a passion for creating positive social impact. After his time of working in the nonprofit sector, he did a transition. That's wrong. Joe comes from a policy background with a passion for creating positive social impact. And he's transitioned into the nonprofit sector. And, he really founded and has worked really hard to run Mata Consulting, where he's the founder and main consultant. And he gets to work with nonprofits and most specifically CRM. So I'm really excited to have him here. Their mission is to give capacity to leaders in the nonprofit sector to maximize their impact and create a better world. And I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add, Joe, but want to go ahead and introduce yourself and a little bit about Mata Consulting?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Andrea. First career was working in policy and, wanted to figure out how do we have the biggest impact on the most amount of people. And quickly realized that I was just a brown kid in that office and was dog and pony show and not too much going on in that political circuit. And so nonprofit world gave me that direct impact, that kind of social change experience. And so over the years, I was lucky enough to have experiences where I needed to kind of build out a CRM process to make the functions of a marketing team or of an advocacy team or a fundraising team or events team, whatever, nonprofits, everyone wears all the hats. And so how do we kind of make the most of these tech systems and these database systems, and how do we make them work for us? And so I've always been a process kind of oriented person. And so, matching my passion with this kind of skill set that I developed over the years has really opened a lot of doors. And that's, the goal of Mata Consulting is we want to create as much positive change in this world as possible. And we recognize the great work that nonprofits are already doing for all of our underserved communities. I'm from a low-income neighborhood in East LA, even grew up in the boonies and of the high desert of Southern California. And, just a lot of experiences over life. I could have easily gone through the school to prison pipeline, all the things that are against our communities. I think I've been able to overcome. And this is my way of giving back to support the organizations that are out there supporting those in need. And together we're able to create change in that way. So very excited and thankful to be on today, and more than happy to dive into, how CRMs can help nonprofits in executing their mission.
Yeah, thank you so much. And before we dive into that first question, because it's really $1 million question, I can't imagine how many nonprofits ask, what's a good CRM? And even me as a consultant and someone who's been around in the decade, there is not a right answer. Luckily, there's been more that have been built. The tech for good sector has definitely seen a push the last couple of years, but technology can only solve so many problems, and you have to know how to use it and set it up. At the end of the day, aside from obviously referring them to you, the first thing I tell them is do you even have the people to run your CRM? And are you ready for that kind of commitment to a technology? Because it can do so much for you. And I know you touched on this, but before we really dive into that big question of technology, what do you think about technology in the nonprofit sector? What are your thoughts around there?
Yeah, it depends, right? Because the nonprofit sector is so huge. There's multinational organizations, and then there's your local, I live in Montebello, California, and there's, local Montebello nonprofits. And I think technology, it depends, right? Like from the like millennial slash Gen Z generation, we kind of grew up with this tech, right? Like we always had cell phones, or I'm like a baby millennial. I was born in 96, so I'm at like that cutoff. So, I grew up with tech, and it's very easy for me to implement these new softwares and tools into everything that I do, right? Like whether it's the business, whether it's just how do I get better at golf or whatever it is, right? Like there's so much tech out there. And a lot of challenges that I see in nonprofits is a hesitancy to implement these technology systems, whether that's because there's a lack of skill, a lack of know-how, things have been working good for so long, let's just keep it that way. If it ain't broken, don't fix it. That kind of mentality. And I think from what I see with clients is that once they overcome that hump and they're just open to it, right? Like being open-minded is like the greatest superpower anyone can really have. We start to see some changes, right? Like let's automate some processes. Let's think through how do we, instead of having to do, manage Excel spreadsheets or write down on paper what our marketing list and who our targets are going to be. Let's just have it in the system, clean it all up. We'll help to make it easy for you as the user to access your data. But yeah, I think that like seeing that process of being real hesitant to starting to want to make a change and open to that implementation and then them reaping the benefits, I think it's like I find a lot of joy in kind of quote unquote modernizing, these
Love that.
teams with technology.
I love that. Kind of heartbroken you went after my Excel spreadsheets because I love Excel, but I get it. Like that's also because I've never had you to set up the CRM how it's supposed to work. So really, really love that. And we're gonna dive into all of this and how it applies to nonprofits. So, to our first question, how can technology be that powerful tool for, and I'm gonna use Hispanics because I'm hopeful that we can, maybe give some secrets to our Hispanic nonprofits listening, but in general, like how can technology be that powerful tool to enhance fundraising efforts, maybe even diverse donor bases and engaging with those supporters effectively?
Yeah. So there's lots we can do, right? So CRM stands for customer relationship management. So for nonprofits, our donors and the people that we serve, those are our customers. We have to make sure that we're engaged with both. We're building good relationships, and we're making sure that we're listening to them and aligning our mission with their needs. So what the CRM system can do, right? Let's say you're a nonprofit and you have some individual donors, maybe some corporate sponsors, and then you have like government foundations and maybe a few private foundations that are all supporting your org. It's a lot. That's a lot of people you have to manage, right? There's even for the grant side, there's reporting, there's the application process. You have to, once you're awarded the grant, there's kind of those payment schedules if it's a multi-year. So it can easily become a lot to lose track of when looking at things holistically, from a high point of view. And what I really enjoy doing is making, pulling all of that information together and building like a dashboard, let's say, to look at, right? Like who are our individual donors? Who are our corporate sponsors? If there's like let's say you want to run a campaign for individuals or corporations, whatever it might be, we can start segmenting these lists of people in the database and then run campaigns based on that specific target audience. It tracks their engagement. There's that donor cycle, right? From identification, qualification, cultivation, solicitation, stewardship. How do we know where these people are in that process? Who are our champion supporters? Who are the people that are new to us that we need to get involved more? So I think this database system more or less gives you deeper insights into everything that's going on in terms of your relationship building on fundraising effort side, and then pulling that information together to see, this is how much money we have coming in. Here's how much we can expect from our pledges. And then here's kind of the gap. And so directors of development, executive directors, marketing directors, once they have that data, they can start thinking, what are some actionable strategies? What are some things that we can do to meet these gaps that we're seeing, or to re-engage with the people that have fallen off, or how do we get in front of new donors? So things like that. There's lots of strategy that we can pull apart from there.
Okay, two things, because one, you kind of answered the second question, so we'll go to the third. But I love that you started mentioning titles. And I'm going to go off a little script here. When you work with nonprofits or when you work with your clients, do you like emphasize the need to train everybody in the nonprofit in the CRM? Because like I feel like there's also that misconception like, oh, only development directors, or do we hire a data analyst and they handle the CRM, or do we hire for the CRM person and that's who handles it? And I feel like that also sets them up for failure, because everybody from the program manager to the volunteer coordinator should be using that CRM to feed it the data and the information that it needs. So like just really curious around like how do you emphasize that with your clients, especially since everybody has so many roles and contributes so much of their time. How do you prioritize that for them?
Yeah, so I think it starts with our initial assessment. So we sit down with the team, and from the executive director to the director to the associate, whoever is involved in the CRM, let's look at your workflows, and I'll meet with you one on one. What do you need? What is going to make your day-to-day life better? So if for an executive director, maybe they just need to see a dashboard. So my goal for them is to do everything outside of, getting the data, all the data collection points, the reports, getting those all good to go so that they can see that dashboard. If it's the director of development, maybe they need a little deeper insight, right? So it's just kind of from there. We're very intentional in meeting each person in their respective roles and thinking through how their workflows tie to the CRM. The reason that we do that is because I was a dev associate at one point. I was that associate that had to do all the data entry, and then that led to me creating the reports and the dashboards so that the executive director can go and see, and then my boss would, their directives from there. So I think very early on I understood kind of that through line path, and something that we really do like to emphasize in our client engagements.
Love that. And so the second question was about communication, which is the example you use. So I'd love to shift about CRM. I think about, again, that customer and that communication. How do program teams use the CRM? Like, what is that? Like you mentioned building, something specific for maybe the program manager. Like, what does that look like for them? Because we hear the word programs impact together a lot. How does that CRM have the possibility to give me, how do you make that connection to give me the impact of a program or help? And again, I think it goes back to setting it up correctly, because again, those stakeholders in the program are people you're going to want to probably put into your CRM. So yeah, I would love an example, or if you've had to work with program managers, how that technology is used in that sense.
Yeah, so I think you hit it right on the nose, like program and impact, right? Like if we're writing grants, we need to show how specific dollars led to specific programmatic outcomes so that organizations get funded over and over again for the programs that they're delivering. One client that we're working with right now, they use their Salesforce CRM for their entire programming process, from client intake to client assessments to managing case plans, milestones, looking at what programs are they in within the nonprofit, and there's certain things that they have to track, right? Like if there's specific compliance components for the participant, let's make sure we're tracking attendance, that they're making sure they're getting their medicine. It just all depends on what kind of service you're delivering, right? But the idea is that we get to see from A to Z of that participant in that program, how they came in, what their status was, tracking all of those data points that you want to report on or to tell your story with, and fully customizing like that build out in the system, so that one, for the executive director, their goal is to see how many people are in my programs, how many referrals, right? If you're in a collaborative, how many people are referring to other orgs? How many people are we referring internally? From the different layers in terms of who needs to see the information, there's the case manager who needs to see their participants, right? The people going through the program. Then there's the program manager. So they're managing the case managers who are managing their, portfolio of cases. So what insights at each level do we need to make sure that these, as we go up, that they have full insight into what is under their jurisdiction. So that's been a pretty big project of ours lately. And I'm really excited to, see the impact of it because one, we're streamlining that process from the case manager to the ED so that the ED doesn't have to say, hey, what happened to this person or what's going on with this program? Everyone's already doing their job in their day to day and it's easily accessible 24/7, right? Like they just log in and it's there. And I think that component of having these systems implemented is that it relieves your day-to-day stress. You're not having to chase people down. And that can be a lot of time cost, I guess you can say, if some of these systems aren't fully fleshed out as needed.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I love that you shared like something that you're working on with your client and how it's for everybody. I work with a lot of clients with a Hispanic background and I love mi gente, right? I sometimes have to speak Spanglish when speaking to them, but this next question is about accessibility and their level of there's a level of like tech literacy, right? And, I sometimes when I have to do capacity building, it's not capacity building of just like creating better processes. It comes from even showing them how to use a quick Google Gmail, or did they know that they could schedule a Gmail? Like sometimes I have to go back to the beginning and basics with them. How do you sometimes deal with the big gap in digital literacy across clients or across even within organizations that you work with, and how do you think organizations can sort of help themselves, right? Because I'm going to give a perfect example. I'm working with a client now who I absolutely love, who is doing amazing work. And I'm here trying to be like, oh, let's implement Teams or Slack because they already have Microsoft 365. Let's see if we can set it up. And very quickly humbled me and reminded me that some of the people that they work with don't read and write, and she communicates with them via WhatsApp voice notes. And again, this work is amazing that they've been able to sustain an organization that, in this way. And I had to take a step back and be like, I'm going to have to look at this totally different. And I'm sure you probably don't get that because this is very like outlier, but like, how do you deal with, with the gaps in digital, like maybe the lack of hesitancy? I find that sometimes people who are afraid of technology are just really scared to mess it up. And I'm like, mess it up. That's how I do. When I see a new software, I'm clicking all the buttons and I'm not afraid to do it. But, I feel like that's how some people are very intimidated by technology. How do you deal with that when working with clients?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a difficult question because like some criteria that not that we have, but it's just kind of like what is going to have a client agree to do this work with you is that one, they understand the problem and two, they're ready to do something about it. And that's it, right? So at time for me, because I'm very data specific workflow systems, most times my clients understand what the CRM is and how they've plugged it in and whatnot. So, but I have come across where some of the staff, you right, like at a case manager level, program manager level, whatever it might be, they're not as tech savvy and they need to have more training. So part of what we do to make sure that after we engage with the client, like we figure out the needs, we'll update the systems, get those changes in. We'll make sure that we document everything from A to Z in terms of how we thought through reports, what a workflow looks like. And we'll do this in a couple different ways. So there's a super cool system called Scribe. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but basically I can go through a process on my computer and it'll record where I clicked, how I clicked, what the steps were, and then kind of put together that how-to manual for me. And I don't have to go there and like think it through. I just kind of do it and it records it. So that's like one kind of like we'll do like an actual how-to of like this is what it looks like, this is where you click, or we'll do a loom, so like a video recording of that process. So me talking through it, it's just a video of me going through the process, and then we'll also like have everything written on a like an SOP, standard operating procedure kind of document, so that If you are a reader and that's how you learn, you have that. If you're like a let me get my hands on it and go through it, then that's the scribe. If it's let me watch and learn, then that's the video component. So we try to meet people where they are in terms of their learning styles. And then in addition to that, we'll do training workshops. So we'll get the team together as a whole and be like, here's everyone's roles and their responsibilities and like why it's so important for every single person to do what they need to do so that as a unit it's working effectively. And then we'll schedule one-on-ones for like individual training to make sure that like if you have questions, if you're not understanding, if after all of that you still need more support, then we'll sit there and we'll teach essentially and make sure that folks are educated on it. But I think what organizations can do, or what professionals, I guess, can do is, I mean, it does take like a learner's mentality, right? Like a lifetime learning mentality of this is something that I need to do. This is something that I don't know. What am I going to do about it? And it's not like, don't just stop there. Like, actively, ask your boss, like, hey, are there any professional development funds? Or, hey, there's this free program, or hey, there's this YouTube Academy, right? Like, I've learned so much on YouTube that I don't even know, where to start with that. But, or it could be books, like whatever learning style it is, and you recognize that there's a need for you to do it, like just the best thing you can do is invest in yourself, whether that's time, knowledge, or money. So always encourage people to either, if your organization is not able to invest in you, you should always be investing in you.
That's a great answer. And what a great example. And I think you answered it perfectly because you hit on 2 points. One, we turn down clients. That's the truth. Like if you're not ready, like I love how you emphasize on this is a partnership. This is what I can deliver, but you have to meet me halfway because we consultants are not we're not Harry Potter. Like we don't just wave our wand and get rid of all the bad things going on in your organization. Most of the time we're creators, but we're facilitators of a process that they just needed help to get implemented. And I love that you hit that, if the organization is not ready, then the partnership won't be successful and your services won't be used to their full capacity. And I love that you use the word learners mentality. And I think one, nonprofit professionals are really good at that in terms of like putting themselves in there. But I do find that technology is the one place where they're just scared or intimidated. Or I was having this discussion the other day where like, one of the things I often see is we're behind on reporting for grants. And they're like, there's just too much paperwork to data entry to sort through to everything. We need to hire another person to help with this. And I'm like, well, why are you data entering all this signing sheets in paper? Why don't you do a QR code and have people check in as they walk in? Or, this particular organization has like membership ID numbers. Why don't you have them scan or input it, in a quick thing that records it? Like, why? Why are you gonna? They're like, oh, we don't have the technology for that. I was like, okay, so you wanna hire a full salary person instead of maybe possibly paying, user fees can be between $10 to $20 for a software, but you rather pay a full salary. So, it's those kind of like things that sometimes you have to help them see about investing in technology in the long run, both financially and that you have to be willing to learn something new and do it differently. We're almost at the end, and the last question just really talks about innovation, and you've given great examples about how you've worked with clients, so I appreciate. So if you could just share one more cool example or cool. I think everything you do is cool because CRMs are definitely a whole different world for me. But like, yeah, what are some other ways that you've seen profits, and maybe not your clients, but a case study you've read or anything where innovation has really played that role in the way technology has shaped their organization?
Yeah, I think so. Aside from like the fundraising benefits, programmatic benefits, I mean, I guess this is part of fundraising, but nonprofits do a lot of events, right? Like whether that's lunch and learn, or a breakfast, or a dinner, or a golf tournament, or a play day, cleanup, like whatever it is. And there's always a lot of events, right? Because that's how you engage your community, your families, etc. There's so many awesome tools out there where you can like basically streamline the whole thing, right? So there was like one organization, this is another client that I'm thinking about. where they were creating like sign up forms for every single event. And they were just kind of managing that like spreadsheet for every event. At the end of the year, when they were trying to tell their impact, she had to go and count how many people attended each event, what the totals were. And like you said, like there's so much software out there that can help you manage this. One from like a RSVP standpoint, but to take it even further, there are some pretty sophisticated tools where you can do your RSVPs, your like save the dates, your parking information, your reminders, your follow-ups, where it's kind of all in this system. But if you want to do an auction, there's like that component. If you want to do a text to give, if you want to do a QR code, if you want to do, even if like for like a gala or like a dinner, there's even softwares out there that have like tabling set up where you can literally like put in, your event manager is super stressed in like figuring out what tables are going to go where, what VIPs are going to go here, how do we want this to look? And all of that can be done and managed in that system to where you just show up that day and you already know, like, as people check in, the seats are already assigned. You don't have to worry about, a lot of things like that. I think the magic of all of these systems, and because the technology isn't, I mean, there's innovative stuff in like AI and kind of on that side of things. But I think for nonprofits, we're not ready to engage in implementing AI in every single workflow. Like we're just not at that point. The point where we're at is these small wins of let's not have 5 copies of the RSVP list that we're hand checking off who's there when they get there. Right. Like, and I know
You
I'm
just triggered so many people, but yes, I love it.
and that's the truth, right? Like that is where we're at. And I think that there's so many opportunities for growth. And that's what's exciting is that, I mean, the whole reason why I personally wanted to work in the nonprofit world was because I was working in a startup setting. I was working in a high tech environment where people are managing project plans and everything from A to Z is outlined. And then I go and I look at a nonprofit and it's just chaos. And it's like, everyone's so worried about this for profit, trying to sell stuff to people, but no one's worried about changing lives and like, how do we serve others better? So, and I don't mean that to say like, obviously the people in the nonprofit world are the ones that care, but I mean the consultant world, the people that are investing in companies that are trying to expand and do the capacity building work that needs to be done. As you know, I just think that there's so much need there, so much opportunity. And yeah, I'm super excited about, everything you're doing at Palante and super grateful for you having me on today as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because I think that's also why we clicked and connected over LinkedIn, by the way. Nonprofits, use your LinkedIn. But yeah, like month one of working at a startup tech company, and I was like, the next time I run a nonprofit, it is going to be the most efficient nonprofit you're going to see. And that came from even using things like Mural, or the automations from Zapier, because we had engineers and like, hey, I need this done. We can't do it, but I'll zap it for you. And it was just like, oh my God, this is the kind of efficiency and technology implementation we could probably do. And I think I resonate that with a lot because when I talk to people, they're like, well, why are you not in the tech space right now? I mean, aside from it being a very interesting field right now, I want to bring it back to the nonprofit sector. That's really what I want to do. I want to take what I've learned, the way I've learned to, I worked with the product team and the way product teams in tech companies, the way they lay out from idea to launch their product was insane. Learned a lot about that. And so I wanted to kind of bring some of those ideas to the nonprofit sector. That was the last of my questions, Joe. I'd really like to finish off with if there's anything else you'd like to share and or, feel free to let us know how to connect with you. You started a blog and which I love and I reshare, but anything else you'd like to add to our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, super excited about all the work and things that are going on at organizations. Super appreciative for this time with you, Andrea. My LinkedIn, I'm Joe A. Mata the third. My business is Mata Consulting. And just to share, a quick blurb is we help nonprofits like reduce data and workflow inconsistencies, save staff hours on a monthly basis, cut manual data entry, improve fundraising outcomes through donor and programmatic insights. And, again, we're born from the nonprofit grind. We know that where you're at in your world, and we've been able to come out on the other side and see, what we can do to work together. And, more than happy to talk with anyone who has specific needs, and always here as a partner, even just to brainstorm. I think it takes a village, and I'm super excited to be a part of this new era of nonprofits as we're entering, this like digital age. It's super exciting. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. Well, thank you to our listeners for here. This is episode 7. Feel free to subscribe to our podcast. And thank you so much again for accepting and for being. I think this is a great discussion. I look forward to, hopefully collaborating with you more in the future. Thank you, everybody. Bye.